Okay, today I have the distinct pleasure of introducing my other business partner with Empowered Salon Leaders because we had the opportunity, Christine, to interview Rosemary and Nuala with Empowered Salon Leaders. So we saved the best for last, our founder of Empowered Salon Leaders, because it would not have happened if it wasn't for you, Christine. And I want to talk about that here in a little bit, but I want to introduce everyone to the amazing Christine Zilinski. So thank you for being on today.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm so happy to be here.
So great. You guys are going to love this interview. I got the opportunity to interview Christine for my B series podcast, which was amazing. So you'll have to listen to that one as well with Christine. She's a salon owner, she's a stylist, she's an industry speaker and trainer and leadership expert. And by the way, she did a TEDx talk. Yes, you heard it right. She did a TEDx talk called Here I Am. So you have to look that up and watch her. It's probably one of the best TEDx talks that I've ever listened to, Christine. It's absolutely amazing. I want to dive into that as well. And what I want to start with was how you started your foundation, because you say you built a solid foundation, which I 100% agree with Vidal Sassoon, which is so awesome because in the Paul Mitchell schools, the beginning trainers all came from the Vidal Sassoon training, including Angus Mitchell, which is so awesome, which was Paul Mitchell's son. And so I know you were one of his trainers.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about that because that was pretty awesome. It's kind of giving away your age, although in this video, everyone probably thinks you're 20 years old. Very young.
Oh, good.
I love it. You started your career in 1990. You've been with Vidal Sassoon. You've been with Davines. I want to talk about that. And you've been a salon owner since the year 2000. And I want to dive really deep into your salon ownership and some of the struggles you're going through right now, which have kind of been a blessing in disguise, so to speak, as you've been speaking on this as well too. But we want to dive into that and answer any questions that our salon leaders have today on this webinar as well too. So thank you, Christine. Let's start first with the TEDx talk. How did you get asked to speak on the TEDx talk? How did that happen? What did you speak on? And what was that experience like?
So I, first of all, thank you for the introduction. And it's always nice when somebody else introduces you and then you hear about everything that you've done and you're like, oh, wow, okay, I feel really good. So thank you for that introduction. So I have a coach that I've worked with for a number of years, probably since I've known her since 2000. And this just goes to show you how valuable relationships are in this story, because she was actually a guest of the salon for 20 years. And she was a principal of a school and she left the school. And during her transition, I turned her on to a book called Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott. And I just let her know that I had been doing a lot of training on that book at the Bumble and Bumble Institute. And I thought that she would really value it and love it. So she kind of took it and ran with it. And she went and got certified in Washington at Susan Center. And so we just always had great conversations behind the chair. I asked her if she would be my business coach at the time, because we just had so many great conversations and I thought she would add value to me and my organization. So she said yes. Fast forward years later, she was doing a lot of training for speakers for TEDx. And so she reached out to me and she said, we have a talk on identity that I think that you would align perfectly with. Would you consider being a speaker? And at the time, I was opening another salon and I had a lot of things going on, but I said yes, because I know that opportunity comes and you better just say yes. So I did. And so that's pretty much how it happened. And so I ended up working with her on my speaking. Also, I was being coached by Paul Martinelli at the time. And so between the two of them, they helped me craft my talk.
Wow. Oh my gosh. So you've been working with Paul Martinelli for quite a while as a John Maxwell coach, which I
Yeah.
want to dive into that because he's probably one of the greatest, or maybe the greatest coach out there that lives. And you've learned so much from him. And I love the fact that you really, really pulled in that your network is your net worth. And I love that about you, because you have really reached out to some high level players in your life. And as we talk about salon leaders, or maybe up and coming salon leaders, Christine, and I know you and I both coach salon leaders, what
Mhm.
is one of those things that pulls people away from really building a strong network like you've done?
I think that people could perhaps be afraid that maybe they're not good enough, or they're not in the same arena. That's what I hear. I also think that sometimes we could be closed-minded, that we have to search for people that are in our industry. And so I would encourage people to look outside the industry. And I would also encourage people to see what others are doing. And if you like the life that someone else has, to show up a bit more curious in their presence. So how can I, how can I ask yourself a question? How can I get closer to that person? So one of the things that Tony Robbins, I'm a big Tony Robbins fan, and I started training with Tony Robbins' organization in the early 2000s. I became a fire walker a couple times at his events. And one of the things that he always said was, success leaves clues. And that quote always has stuck out to me, that if I see somebody that's successful, regardless of whether they're in the salon industry or outside the salon industry, I want to get to know them and what they've done. And the other thing I would say with that is, I've met a lot of clients behind the chair that have helped along with my success as well by doing that. Just staying curious, asking questions, and sharing some of your aspirations with people, and allowing people to pour into your life.
Wow. Okay. You hit something super, super hard. So, and that's the beautiful part. My husband has always said, he's been a lawyer for 30 plus years. He just retired, but he always said to me, Christine, that the smartest people he knows in this world are hairdressers,
Mhm.
because of their network, of
Yeah.
the types of people they are around. And I love what you said, because it's really interesting. I visit salons kind of like as a pastime to get my hair done, besides the fact I can't do my own hair. But I like to see what other people are doing and saying and being, right? And so I'm in front of hairdressers quite often in different states, right? And different towns. And I'll just drop in. Usually I go to high end salons, and it's really, really interesting the amount of stylists and even maybe leaders in those salons that aren't curious with me. They don't ask me one question while I'm sitting in the chair. All they want to do is get my hair done and get me out of the chair. And so, which is really quite scary. So let's talk not only to salon leaders, salon managers, salon directors, let's talk to the stylists out there too, and also to the salon leaders about how to coach their stylists to stay curious through this whole facet, and why it's so important.
Well, I'll talk about a specific client that a guest in the salon that I had done his hair for about 20 years, him and his wife. And he is in the financial industry in Manhattan. And he does very well for himself. Both of them do. That no children. His wife is in the marketing industry, and I've cut their hair now for 20 years. And he approached me and he said, I've watched you build your organization.
Mm.
And I just want you to know, if ever you need money to expand your organization and you need a partner, you could count me in.
Wow.
Now, I never took him up on that. Um, but it just goes to show you that when you build relationships and people are watching you and you don't even realize they're watching you,
Yeah.
that there are people that really believe in you. And so you're not even consciously aware of those things. These are sort of, when you plant the seed and all of these things are germinating underneath the soil, that's just proof right there
Mhm.
that these things are actually happening and could be popping up around you at any given time, and you don't even know.
Yeah. So true. Yeah. When opportunity comes, it's too late to prepare too, right? So just stay in preparation phase, stay curious. And so let's talk about empowered salon leaders, because you're the founder of that. And I just think it's so incredible because you saw something that even I didn't see. I've been a part of the next level salon leadership, but you've been able to open my eyes to kind of look outside my little bubble, right?
Mhm.
And learn from other companies as well too, because when we start to do that with different types of people, we have more diversified information too. And I think that's just so important, and to be able to network outside of your little bubble. So there may be some hairstylist or leader listening to this podcast right now saying, I am kind of in my bubble. Like, how do I break out of that bubble? So why did you start Empowered Salon Leaders, and what's your vision for it as well?
So I think this has a lot to do with your intuitive thoughts that you get and writing them down,
Mm.
because I can honestly say that 3 years ago, when I was sitting at one of the John Maxwell events, I ideas were flooding through me, and I had a notebook and I was sketching and I was drawing and I was using my imagination, right? I was imagining what could happen. And I remember distinctly, actually, the moment John Maxwell was on stage and he was talking about different opportunities, and I just started sketching this outline and seeing an opportunity of leadership, of why I joined John Maxwell, and saying, okay, this could really be bigger than I'm thinking about. This could be an we need to change leadership in our industry, and of course I can't just do it. So who do I know? This is a really big dream, and who do I know that could possibly help me with this? And so I just started writing out names of people that Rosemary, Nuala, Kaylee, like just names that popped up, the people that I knew I had relationships with or had seen. And, could I make this a reality? So I just wrote down the ideas. And I think what's important when you're doing this is not to question yourself, well, that might not ever work, but just to know you have an idea and you don't know whether actually this idea is for you. Is it for now? But it's through you. So it is for you. Trust that it's for you. And you don't even know when it might happen. So that's what I did. I really sketched a whole outline of what I saw at that time. And then it would remain in the back of my head. And if I had another idea, I would write it down. And then I sort of stuck that notebook away. And when COVID came, I remember it was one of my first thoughts that popped into my mind was, let me go back to that notebook and let me take those ideas out, because that was really about doing leadership. It was about online training. It was about, how could we become international? And that's really what the focus was. So that's when I reached out to you and Nuala, and I said, I think we have something really special here, and I think our industry needs us in a bigger way. So that's kind of where it all started.
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought all that up, because I feel like people are listening right now thinking, oh man, what do I do with these thoughts? They kind of fleeting thoughts. I feel like everyone has these intuition thoughts, right? And I remember, I think it was my business partner, Win Clayball, he's like, obey your instincts,
Yeah.
obey your instincts. And I'm like, that's a pretty big word, obedience, right? Because I feel like our destiny and our purpose lies in that obedience. as well. And so it's something that I've like really, really been working on, working my faith muscle, my belief muscle goes along with obedience, like just hearing God's voice, like what does he have for me? And ironically, when you had reached out to me, I was like, no, no, no. In my own personhood, I had no time for that, to be able to get together on Monday nights. I'm like, this is going to take time away from my family, whatever, right? To do these classes. And something inside me, and it's that still small voice, I call it God because I'm a woman of faith, that said, no, lean into this. And I had no idea the types of people I would get in front of by just saying yes. Like we're talking about the yes. You said yes to TEDx when you're thinking, oh, I don't have time for this. Like, and maybe some fear was inside as well too. And I'm thinking in my head, oh, I don't really want to get out of my bubble because I'm kind of comfortable in my little bubble. I don't want to get outside that. But you're so right. Like deep in my heart, I knew, because of the things I learned about what a bad leader I was many years ago, that I needed to start shifting and changing lives. So I didn't realize by saying yes to you, Christine, that it would open up the door to more impact, even bigger impact. I had no idea. So talk a little bit about like what the big needs are right now in this industry, and why you think leadership training is so needed.
Well, I think that I think that there's many needs, but I think the primary need that I see, and I want to just talk from experience, because I don't really want to just say this is what I see out there, but I want to say this is where I was on my journey, because I think it's really important to understand I didn't start here, and I had struggle. I had struggle retaining staff. And what I think is important that I did, and I would suggest that you do this, is I started off very successful in the beginning. And my focus in the beginning was I was focused on hair. I was focused on being creative. I was focusing on only my team. I was focusing on building craft, and that was my main focus, and that was it. I didn't worry about money. I didn't worry about profit and loss statement. I didn't worry about any of it. It happened, and it wasn't a good thing because I didn't have an idea of what that was meant to be. Like, how do I read a profit and loss statement? That's really important. But I did have a lot of keys to success in the beginning, except I didn't understand them, right? So what happened is, as I started to grow, I didn't know how to scale. And I think sometimes ignorance is bliss, but not in the situation that you really need to know your numbers, and you need to know how to scale, and you need to be curious and reach out to people that are already doing it, that have already know how to do that, that have multiple locations, that know how to scale. And so the other thing is, in the beginning, I really built my salon off of my reputation, my skill. And as it started to grow, what happened was everybody was telling me and giving me the advice, get out from behind the chair, get out from behind the chair, get out from behind the chair. And to be honest, I think what I should have done in hindsight is I should have hired somebody to do all this other stuff, marketing this, because my skill was best served training my team. And I think the most important thing, if I were to look back and I were to say, what could I have done better? I would have said, stay where your giftedness is and where I spent the most time in development. And that was in my craft at that time. But I didn't know at that time, so this was my learning experience, I didn't know at that time that I should have hired everything out, which is what you're an expert on, Tina, is that delegation of hiring a marketing person, because I was, and am good behind the chair. I'd spent 10 years at Vidal Sassoon training to be one of their lead teachers, I spent time in Santa Monica as an instructor, and I love it. I absolutely love it. So in hindsight, I probably should have stayed more in that area in the salon world. So
Yeah.
my advice would be to stay where you're strongest and most gifted and hire out the rest. And it's not always the key to get out from behind the chair if that is where you're the best and where you shine the most.
Yeah.
So the other thing I would say, where I feel like the biggest need is for salon owners to know their business, to know their profit and loss, and not get lost in it. So I think that's what I was trying to do in my early stages of understanding my profit and loss. Is I was trying to understand it, and I was spending most of my time in my office trying to crunch numbers when I should have been out with my team more often in the area that I was stronger. So those are my discoveries. And when I talk to salon owners right now, I think that the biggest challenge for them that I see is training their team and getting their team up and running, and to really trust. Like if you are working with your team and you're training them through leadership, trust them and allow them to fly. Because I think what I see is people not really trusting their teams and not allowing them to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
So when I opened the salon, I didn't have a business background. I knew how to cut hair well. How many people have lost staff members that have left to go open their own salons?
Yeah, a lot.
So if you don't let them fly, guess what? They're gonna fly.
That's right. Wow, this is so good. I want to go back to the struggle with retaining staff here in a moment. But before, I want to go back to what you stated, because I feel like a salon leader's listening right now that's saying, but I'm so good behind the chair. Like, it gives, like, the only reason why I didn't stay behind the chair, Christine, is because I sucked at doing hair. Like, I was not doing a good service to my guests. I was ruining hair out there, so it was bad. But so I was blessed in that, facet of just staying in my lane for that reason. But let's talk to that hairdresser that owns a salon right now. It's just like, but Christine, it gives me so much reward. I love doing hair. Like, help me, give me a different answer on here. Like, what advice do you have for that hairdresser salon owner, right? That may have a few stylists or many, that's just, really loves what they do.
So my advice would be, if you're very good at it, reproduce yourself. Mm-hmm. So stay in it, but it doesn't mean that you have to just be behind the chair 4 days a week. Maybe you're behind the chair 1 day a week, and then you're training your instructors, not your staff necessarily, not apprentices, but now you're training your more senior staff to teach your staff. Mm-hmm. So it's like, where are you most useful with your skill that can help you multiply? I think that's really the question. Yeah. So if you're
multiplication,
that's how you're going to grow. And so if you're an educator, which a lot of salon owners are, if you're an educator and that's your skill, then use your skill to multiply.
Yeah, I love that. And I 100% agree with you. I'm blessed because my business partner is my daughter, and she's that hairdresser that's incredible behind the chair. And but what she's done is she's reproduced herself, which is awesome. She's not like, she's 30, and so, but she's been doing this since she was 16, and so it's just incredible to be able to watch her. But the interesting thing is with Brianna, is now she's down to 3 days a week because she had 2 children, right? And so she's down to the 3 days that I can babysit 2 out of 3 of those days, which is really ironic. And it's so awesome in itself, that I have this opportunity to not only run businesses, but be a grandma too, and so a lot of people will say, oh my gosh, how do you do it all? I'm like, well, I just keep reproducing myself. So I
Yeah.
love that you said that. What is keeping people from reproducing themselves, Christine? Because I hear like a lot of excuses, but there's no one out there to reproduce. I hear a lot of that, or I have, salons that I've coached that have, like tons of team members, well into the 100 team members, and they're really frustrated because they feel like they don't trust their team, to have that inner circle. And I'm like, oh no, you don't trust your team. Okay, so we got to start from ground one, which I know you and I are going to talk about this as well too. But what do you think is causing people to make that type of statement?
I think that they need to get better as a leader. And I think it's really the mindset, because there was a time where I was the person to say they. And I never thought I would be that person because, coming from Vidal Sassoon, I thought differently right off the bat. Because I came from that company and it was very inclusive and everyone had to go through a training program. So everything was a lot more elevated with thinking and skill. And so all the way around, I started my journey as a salon owner, I think, with elevated thinking. I was always a giver, because when you work for Vidal Sassoon, you are a giver. You just are. You have to go through a training program, and the whole training program is about learning a skill and giving a skill back. Learning a skill and giving a skill back. And I think if I really look at our industry, that is a big part of what's missing is, why are you learning how to be a better hairdresser? Vidal Sassoon changed. I think he left a footprint on the industry, and his footprint is giving back.
Yeah.
That was his legacy, is how do I give back skill so that I can grow others? And so I think that's really missing. I think that's what's missing in a lot of what we do. And salon owners, if I could think about, and again, I like to go back to my mindset of what I struggled with was I went in with a great attitude and then I got beat up. And the reason why I got beat up is because I solely focused on skill and I didn't focus on leadership.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time as an educator, and I spent a lot of time pouring out. And I poured in, but I poured in skill. And so what did I have to give out? So I think I like to look at it like, almost like a canister, right? And you're pouring out. Well, I was pouring in lots of creative skill, and I was getting inspired, right? And then I was pouring out inspiration, and I was pouring out skill. When I joined the John Maxwell team and I started pouring in leadership, I started raising my mindset, and then I could now pour out leadership.
Wow.
So there was a shift at that moment, and the shift was, I wrote a blog about it. It was get better, not bitter. And it was the shift that I had in my mind about when a team member leaves, how do I not get bitter?
Yeah.
If somebody comes to me and says, I'm leaving, or if they decide that that's not their choice of exit strategy and they choose a different strategy, how do I not get bitter?
Right.
I remember years ago, I was in business for about 7 years, and my first employee that I coached and trained, and I spent years and hours to make her an unbelievable colorist. she left the salon without notice on Good Friday with 4 of my other staff members and went and opened the salon down the street. And I walked into the salon and, you know, four of my high producing revenue producers had left. And she sent me flowers to thank me.
Yeah.
And I wanted to send her a bag of doo-doo because I was so mad. You know, I was like, how could she send me flowers? And I remember going to church and lighting a candle and praying for her, for me, like just that I just was at the wit's end of not understanding why somebody could do this to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then now, years later, pouring into myself with new ideas, new concepts, new thought, leadership, understanding servant leadership, I realized that I made it about me when it wasn't about me, first of all. She didn't leave me. She left because she felt there was another opportunity, and the way that she was going to open a business was she thought she had to leave like that. She didn't think if I came to Christine, maybe she'll partner. If I came to Christine, maybe she will be happy for me. If I came, she didn't think any of those things. That was not in her realm of thought. Her realm of thought was, I need to take these clients because if I don't, I'll never be able to make it, you know? So I think that if we raise the level of thinking in ourselves, we'll see things differently outside of ourselves.
So good. Okay. I've extracted so much from you, Christine, about how to get better as a leader. I mean, that's the main focus, right? And reaching outside of our industry to get that type of training because it hasn't been given to us before. There's really no one spearheading that. You know, I've been so blessed to be a part of the Paul Mitchell school world and the Paul Mitchell world, which really started their foundation with Vidal Sassoon. And so being able to, you know, expand that, and our motto is all about giving back. And so the first step that I put down here is give back without expectations, because really, really, if you're giving to get, then it's really just a transition, right?
Oh, totally.
Yeah. And so I think that's something I've been working on really my entire life, because I'm so blessed because I had parents that are just so giving without expectations. I watched that example, but not everybody gets that example, right? And so being a part of Paul Mitchell and watching John Paul and watching when they give without expectation. So I've been so blessed to be a part of that industry. And I know you and I are in a really cool Bible study right now, and we talked about this, and it's called The Bait of Satan, B-A-I-T, The Bait of Satan by John Bevere, and it's the spirit of offense. And I believe, and I know you do too, and I would love you to expand on this, that being offended is what will really destroy you as a person, but especially as a business leader. So do you want to talk about that and like the lessons that you've extracted so far from that study?
Yeah, I think it's saving my relationship, to be honest with you, in a lot of ways too, because I'm engaged and we're, you know, talking about getting married, and you know, I have a little bit of fear of marriage. I'll say I didn't have a good experience the first time around, and but I do relate a lot of the book to a business owner, and it's kind of like what I was just saying about, you know, if somebody comes to us, I now have the understanding that if somebody's going to take the time to come to me and say something, I have to value, it doesn't matter what comes out of their mouth. I have to value the trust that they're giving, that I need to give them, I should say, and the trust that they're giving me to have that conversation. That's where it starts with. And if somebody has something to say to me that is not necessarily what I like, I think that what I've learned is to say thank you. Because even if it's, you might feel, and what happens to me is it starts in the body first.
Yeah.
I notice that maybe I get sweaty, I get uncomfortable, my body is trying to tell me something. And I think that's sometimes what happens is when our body tells us something first, based on past experiences, we're used to reacting. So,
Yeah.
right? And so if somebody says something that we don't like, our body sends a signal. Maybe it's heart palpitations or sweaty palms or whatever it is. And then we're just known to react a certain way because based on our past is what has happened. What I would encourage you to do is when somebody does that is you don't react. And sometimes you just don't react at all.
Yeah.
And you maybe give yourself 24 hours. This is what's worked for me is I give myself 24 hours. I write out what I didn't like. And then I just start asking myself questions like, did I not like what that person said? For what reason? Like, was it something that triggered an old experience?
Mm-hmm.
Was it something, did I feel like it was not respectful? And then I'll give myself 24 hours and then I'll have a conversation. And usually my conversation is what, by Susan Scott, Fierce Conversation. She uses the 5 words. And this has helped me immensely with a team member. And it's also helped me to train them how to have conversations with each other. And it's when you blank, it makes me feel blank, right? So in other words, it'd be like, Tina, when you sort of abruptly spoke to me in the middle of while I was doing a client, it made me very frustrated because I couldn't give the client the right attention. So what happens is you're stating what the person did and how it made you feel, but you're not posting blame. It's not like you did this and I don't like you, or, so that tactic and that book has changed the way I approach offense. Susan Scott's book,
Yeah.
so much has helped me with offense. And now that I'm reading The Bait of Satan, I just have to tell you, I can't believe how much I was thinking I was a little bit past this, but now that I'm reading this and I'm in it, I'm watching myself still get offended.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so good that you're so aware now of the offense. And I've been doing the same thing. Like if I start to notice my body tense up, especially around my husband, and so same situation. And like you said, you got to really watch yourself. And what I call that is raising the bar on emotional intelligence. So we do a lot of training in our salons on emotional intelligence. We're doing a book right now, the 13 things emotionally strong people do. And so it's a really great book. It's been opening up my eyes, my team's eyes. And I love that because I put that as step 2, how to get better as a leader. So number 1 was giving back without expectations, and watch yourself on being offended, right? Be aware of when you are. And I want to talk about some ideas to help counteract that as well too. But so listening to your body. So raising, and I love this. So raising the level on your emotional intelligence. So EQ, I call it, right? Emotional quotient. And so when it's something that I've always said, I don't always follow through, but I love something that you said, which kind of made me realize this mantra: when emotions are high, brain cells are few. So watching my emotions. And so, January and February is an interesting month in the state of Michigan. I'm sure it is for you too, in New Jersey and New York as well too, because we don't have a lot of sun. And so I'm blessed. I get to spend most of my winter in Florida, but it's something that I've been kind of training my team on, which I'll probably make it a system that please don't make any decisions in January or February that might alter your whole life, right? And so being careful to make sure, because I think a lot of people make shifts and changes in their life. Maybe some of them are good, but maybe not so much in those types of months when there's, depression's a little bit higher because of no sun. Like, this is a real thing, right? That
Yeah,
really
for sure.
actually happens. And I know scientists and doctors have even repeated this over and over. It's like that winter gloom, whatever you want to call it. But talk a little bit about, as a salon leader and a salon owner, like, how do you train your team? And also as a salon coach, how do you train salon leaders to train their team on emotional intelligence?
Hmm, that's a great question. So I'm going to use Susan's book because it's a core training that we use. Actually, we're doing a mastermind group right now together as a salon. We've had her systems in my salon for 15 years. And one of the things we're doing right now is we're going through the study. We did a 6-week study on it where everyone reads, 2 chapters, and then we discuss it. And now what we're doing is, it was the team's decision. I was just ready to like dive into another book, but the team said, this book is so valuable. We think that this has the ability to change our entire organization and the people that join. So we want to spend a little more time on it. Do you mind if we dig in and we create more systems and processes for, our organization? I said, no, not at all. I said, I think this would be great. So what we're doing is, now we just finished chapter 1 again, and we split up into teams. So I give each team a part of the chapter, and I gave them 5 questions to ask themselves. And it was, I can't remember exactly all the questions, but it was something like, how do you see this living in our culture?
Mm-hmm.
How do you think that we can implement this in our training program? What do you think the roadblocks would be as we roll this out? How do you think that we can, overcome those roadblocks? And I think the last one was, on a personal level, how would this affect you, your life, moving forward? And so I just gave them 5 questions. And then what they did was they came to the weekly meetings with those questions answered. And then what we're going to do now is we're rolling them out to create systems and processes for that book. And so I think that was a big part of the emotional intelligence for us.
Wow, that's incredible. I love it. And this is really unheard of, isn't it, Christine, of salons actually diving into leadership books. They may be going to hair shows together, but they're not diving into leadership books. And I think, you, myself, Nuala, and Rosemary with Empowered Salon Leaders have really changed that, because we've had, a ton of salon owners jump on board with us and take that information and apply it to their teams, which I want to talk about here in a moment. But I want to stay on something that you were talking about, because you did your own 6-week study. We do the same thing. We're doing Radical Candor right now, which is a similar book. And so taking that information and applying some of it to make it into communication systems. And I actually, during COVID, I came up with some new systems that I didn't realize was happening until COVID actually hit, because true character starts to form when you're having crisis, right? And so something that we started noticing was gossip. And we realized we never developed a system for why you shouldn't gossip and what to do instead. And so we came up with a brand new communication system, fix your communication in our salons. And I'll tell you, it's incredible. It retained some really incredible team members that just were not aware of what they were doing, Christine. It was absolutely incredible. So I think, kind of going back to that foundation, because you've had some incredible foundational training, in this industry, like getting back to that, like fix your foundation. But the first and foremost, what I notice with salon teams, I'm actually coaching a nonprofit right now that's not in the industry. And it's interesting because they don't have any written systems.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, this nonprofit is going to crumble if you do not have written systems. Just like any business, I don't care what you are, you have to have systems. Our church has systems. We have culture points all over the walls in our church, right? So anybody and everybody needs written systems, a way to behave. This is how we behave around here, right? And so let's go back to the retaining the staff part, because we actually developed a system now. It's in the process right now, Christine. You're going to love this, of how to quit. It's being
Yeah, I love that. I
writing.
love
Because
that.
people don't, because basically, and I'll tell you, this has been proven time and time again. And I know in that book, Bait of Satan, that it talks about that, like how important it is to leave a church even
Yes.
in the right way, leave a business in the right way, right? And so, but I'm like, as a leader, that's my job. If people aren't quitting right, that's my fault, because I never developed a system. So we actually sent out a mass email to all my teams in my schools and actually taught them how to quit. And you know what it was based on? It was based on someone quitting the wrong way. So it's a list of our screw ups. So we have somebody quit the wrong way. Okay, sorry, it's my fault. Let's develop the system. And we had a team member that came to us, said, thank you so much for showing me this, because I want to give you 2 months before I leave, because I want you to bless me, because we want to bless people, right? So we don't want people on our team that have outgrown our team. And so we want to bless them and to be able to say, hey, you've got to hire this person. And they didn't give us that lousy 2 weeks. Like, there's no such thing in my book that I could replace you and hire somebody in 2 weeks. Now, maybe 2 months, 2 years is better, right? But 2 months. But let's talk about that, Christine. Like, what's been your experience with that, and what do you want salon leaders to learn from this, of as far as training their team members how to quit and what that might look like?
First of all, I absolutely love that, because I think it's really important. We have that in our employee handbook, an exit strategy. So I think it is super important. And I would even go as far as to, I love the fact that you sent out an email. And maybe that should be something that's done yearly or every 6 months, where people, understand that it's okay. And so the other thing that I've done a lot is I do exit interviews as well. And so when I do an exit interview, it allows me to go deeper and to find out the why behind it. And if there's anything that I could do as a leader to change in my organization, so that I can help to support the people that are either in my organization, or what could I have done better, with this situation. But as far as providing an exit strategy, I think it's really important, because one of the things that I said earlier was people leave the way they do because they don't know any other way.
Right.
So if we want different, we have to be different, right? So I do think that it's allowing us to, again, trust. You're putting this system in place, you're talking about it. They see how confident you are in this process. And they also see that you're trusting their judgment, that I need to go over here because I feel like maybe this is going to grow me in a different way. Or we can't be one thing for everyone. I mean, it's really impossible for us to try to think that we could do that. So, I love that. I think it's adds value, and it helps salon owners not to be bitter with their teams for wanting something else.
Yeah, 100%. I love what you said. If you want different, you have to be different. And it's so true. And I think, again, get better as a leader. Like, who you are is who you're going to attract. Like, work on your leadership. And so I want to go back as we end this out, because what I'm loving, Christine, is that we've had hundreds of salon leaders go through our master classes. So we do 6-week long master classes. We've been doing it since COVID hit, Empowered Salon Leaders. To watch these salon leaders grow through this is just incredible. And then they're taking this information and applying it to their team. So you go through a master class with us, You do that same masterclass with your team. Could you imagine how much these salon leaders are going to grow just by doing that one masterclass over and over? We just finished Today Matters, which I want you to touch on that and why we do this, and what you've seen through that whole process. And then we're going into Good Leaders Ask Great Questions, which I think goes right along with what you said in the beginning: stay curious all the time. And as a leader, you have to stay curious, and especially with your people, right? And so talk a little bit about what we've been doing and what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, so let me just talk about the masterclass with your team, how important that is, because I have had fierce conversations systems in my salon for 15 years. We have done it, but we never really took our team through a masterclass. We had people read it at one time, and then we developed a system, and we thought the system would kind of just, the process would just go and people would manage the process. But what happened was there wasn't an emotional connection to the material. So as we went through it together and everyone shared, and again, this was a sharing process. I wasn't there to facilitate it. I was just there to open the Zoom and to hear everyone else. And by doing that, what happened was there was transparency, there was authenticity, there were people on the call. The team that was on the call was so excited, and they just felt connected. And with that became, I want to change our environment, and I want this to be more exposed, so that when people are not having a direct conversation or they're not being truthful, we want to be able to have that conversation with them. We want to encourage transparency. We want to encourage trust. And so I just want to put it out there again to salon owners, leaders, that the process of the mastermind is so powerful, and that makes all the difference. It really does. So back to our masterminds that we're doing, which again, this shift that we're seeing in salon owners and the shift that we're getting to experience, it brings tears to my eyes, because, I know some of the salon owners that are on those calls, and I've known them for years. And to see them start to have shift after the first mastermind, and now that we're on like 6 and 7, it's like their thoughts are elevated, their decision making is elevated, their choices are elevated. And I think the biggest thing is that when you're in a master class like this and you're seeing others and you're experiencing and you're hearing stories of others, it allows you to know, I can do it too. Like, you're not alone, which I think is really powerful.
So good. I love that. And, I think, the bottom line here is, if you want to increase trust in your team, you've got to increase the transparency. You really, really hit that home. And I think the most important thing here is that leadership's a process. It's not an event. So we don't go to a leadership event and all of a sudden these great leaders. It's a process, just like cutting hair, just like coloring hair. Like, you don't just learn it one time and then all of a sudden you're a great, cutting specialist or great colorist, right? You have to continue to go over and over, learn new things, learn new verbiage, dialogue, whatever it is, right? Same thing as leadership. Same thing, and even more important.
It's interesting that you say that, because as I started to take leadership training, I was laughing at myself, because I said, Christine, when you walked into the doors of Vidal Sassoon, and I was behind the chair at a salon in New Jersey, and I walked through the doors and they told me basically that I had to start all over. And I'd only been doing hair for like 3 years at the time, but I had a clientele, and, and they said, well, you just have to pretty much forget everything you know and now start all over. And when I started to get through the process of what that was going to look like, and how many tears I shed, and going into the bathroom and having breakdowns, and, people quitting on their lunch because they couldn't handle it. And, as I start to think about that experience, and I thank God that I have that experience to go by, But I also relate that to the leadership training and say, it's like cutting a one length bob, and it's the most beautiful haircut. And it looks so simple.
Mm.
But when you really get down into detail about what it takes to create that line and how much practice goes into it and how much determination and how much persistence, that is leadership.
Yeah.
And we are going to go into the bathroom and we're going to cry.
Mhm.
And we may have a staff member that quits at their lunch hour.
Yeah.
But all I could say is just keep doing it, keep perfecting it, because it's a craft. It is a craft.
Leadership is a craft. I love that you said that. And it's just so important to be around a network of people that believe in this too. Just like you would be around a great colorist, a great, cutting specialist, right? Great at texture, whatever it is, you're going to follow them. You're going to be around them. And so be around, people that are going to put you through leadership training, through skills. These master classes, I think, are awesome. So of course, join Empowered Salon Leaders.
Yes.
But also, how can they also join some of your coaching? Like, what are you doing specifically right now, Christine? And why should people join some of your programs? And how do they get a hold of you?
Okay, great. They can get a hold of me at, my email is salonconcrete@gmail. They can also get a hold of me on all my social media, Christine Zilinski, on Facebook, Instagram, and the three main courses that I'm doing now, along with salon ownership coaching or leadership training, and empowered salon leaders. But I have three courses that I'm doing right now. One's a 10-week haircutting and mindset course, which is really all about understanding the fundamentals of haircutting, along with the mindset that it takes to master. And it's called Mindset to Mastery. And that's a 10-week course. I also have a mini course on that, which is only 6 weeks, and it's 3 techniques, and it's only focused on 3 techniques in 6 weeks. And that's the Mindset to Mastery mini course. I also have a goal setting workshop that I do. It's a 3-hour online workshop, and it's really to understand your purpose, mission, and goals. Mm-hmm. And then I run masterminds right now. Mostly personal masterminds I'm running is Think and Grow Rich. And it's really geared towards having a more money conscious mindset.
Yeah.
So, so we do a master class on that. And then I also do a lot of application in that mastermind. We're starting one on tomorrow is the first day. We started last week was our intake session, and then officially starts tomorrow at 9:30. And I have a link on my Facebook page for that.
I love that. Yeah, and I know you've had Paul Martinelli as a coach. Talk a little bit about what you're doing to grow yourself intentionally, Christine, and that'll give people something to look forward to possibly doing in the future. But I always tell people, like, listen, don't do Tina's plan right now, because Tina didn't start out that plan, in 2013. She started this little plan, like a shift. What shift are you willing to make, right? Yeah. And so, but I want to hear what your intentional growth plan is right now so that people can aspire to do that.
So one of the things that I have always loved is I love the personal development world. So that is, I've been following Tony Robbins since, 2000. I love his work. I used a lot of his coaches and work with them and love them. And when I met Paul Martinelli at the John Maxwell team, I just knew he was my guy. I was like, this is my guy. I love, he focuses on mindset. He shifted a lot of my training. I related to his story. I grew up with a lot of learning disabilities and had a very difficult time as a kid. I have dyslexia. And I always had, I take a leap no matter what. I have a lot of guts and I just go for it. But I also fight with self-doubt. And I I do that because of my learning disabilities as a kid, and kind of telling myself, well, you can't do that because it's too big, because blah, blah, blah. Right. So, I don't allow them to take over. I have learned to sort of keep them at bay and understand that I can use them as a good resource now and then, but I don't let them stop me. So my real intention is to be part of a growing company so that I could see how someone builds a multi-million dollar company from the inside. So I've been volunteering for Paul for the last year, and just really getting inside to understand, like, what are you doing? How do you do this? You know, how do you make these decisions? You know, how do you stop this from happening? How do you stop this voice from taking over? And I joined a coaching program with his company for the next year. And between that and the volunteering, to really understand, because my mindset years ago would have been saying, I have to sell the salon because I want to do this. And now my mindset is, I can do this so that I can grow the salon. Like, so just like what you were saying earlier was, when I asked you to do this, you were like, oh, I'm too busy. Mm-hmm. Now it's interesting what this voice will tell us, right? Mm-hmm. And so when COVID came and I saw an opportunity with Paul, I said, okay, in my mind, I'm thinking, how am I going to do this? How am I going to volunteer? Because COVID, right? That was and then I thought, okay, that's funny. I really want to be in the personal development business because I believe leadership and personal development is where it's at. I really want to learn how to build a multi-million dollar company. So why wouldn't I do this? Because I'm too busy? Yeah. Because of COVID? Like, I don't know. What's stopping me? So my intention is to plant myself, just like I strategically plant myself at Vidal Sassoon, around people better than me, who have gone further than I have, and who have the same mindset that I do. And I feel like I've done that in this arena with empowered living and getting involved with this type of mindset. I feel like I've done that with empowered salon leaders. I will only, and this is intentional, only hang out with people that want to improve themselves and others.
Yeah, 100%. I'm super, super protective of that inner circle and who I spend my time with. It has to be higher minded people, and so I love that you said that, Christine. So what last piece of advice do you want to give to people to become a better leader?
Oh, I think the one thing that I would say is, and I'm gonna repeat myself, but I think it's worth repeating. John Maxwell has what's called the law of the lid. And it's my favorite law of all laws. And the law is, you need to elevate yourself in order to elevate others. And so I would just keep this one word of advice, and I'm going to sort of give you a little bit of a, sort of a show you, is when people feel like they are doing this against you, and you've probably felt that way at one point or another, even in your own company, you felt like that, right? And so what do you have to do? You have to lift up so that other people can come up. And so I would just have one word of advice would be to grow.
Yeah.
Grow.
Yep, grow. I love it. Thank you, Christine. You're amazing. Everyone's going to love this. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was such an honor to be here.
Us live. Bye, Christine.
Bye. Have a great day.
Take care.